Hello and welcome back to Calathea. It's the last episode today because Cities Skylines 2 comes out tomorrow. We've done so much on this map so far. Pretty much every corner has been covered in some way or another, and there's still a lot left to do. But this series is ending with this episode and it's going to be a good one. In the last episode, we built on the north of the island that's up the north of the map, and we built a modern, stylish town with lots of greenery and high-tech buildings, with a few unique buildings and a monument. It also has its own ferry line connecting back to the mainland in the north, and a few bus routes and a metro station. This district also has its own university, giving the residents a choice between this and the campus, and it's been pretty busy so far. In today's episode, we're going to be doing the last park type that we haven't done yet, which is an amusement park. We're going to be building on this piece of land down here, which is across the highway from the Spanish high-rise district and north of the river from the forestry area. It's going to have its own train station, and I'm going to be changing the highways up a little bit to accommodate for it. It's going to be quite big, and there's going to be lots of decorative features like lakes and rocks and trees to make it feel like a proper getaway like Disneyland or some of the theme parks in the UK, where you can't see the outside world when you're in there, and it feels like you're in this really special place. As this map has a tropical theme, it's going to be a tropical amusement park with lots of palm trees and vegetation, and I think this is going to be one of the most ambitious builds that I've done detail-wise. So the first thing I'm going to do today is put a highway exit in and put a train station in and do the basic road map for the start of the amusement park. Okay, so here is the start of the theme park. Got the train station over here. This is the race station from the Plazas and Promenades pack, and I decided to go with the orange theme to match the orange and blue theme of Calathea. There's a small plaza out here with some props just to give it a little bit of life, and then some car parks out the front and a bus station round here. This is the same bus station that's used in the capital, and I put it in here with the thought that I'll probably do some shuttle buses at some point from other districts, mainly the districts that can't get here via public transport already, so that would be the districts up this way. There's a small car park over here. I doubt anyone will actually use it, to be honest. People haven't really been using the other car parks that I put in, but this was more so for a touch of realism than anything else, because theme parks tend to have these massive car parks. I'm going to keep this on pause while I'm building this because I don't want people coming here until I've actually got the roadmap laid out, and it's going to make detailing a little bit difficult if I've got people all over the place. So let me get stuck into building. Okay, so here is all of the assets that I'm going to put in for now. Probably looks really bare and empty right now, but I have big plans for detailing with this park. And it's going to be along these kind of lines with these tropical rock formations, pathways going through some jagged rocks, going over the top. This park is going to look so different by the time I'm done with it. So let me get stuck into detailing. Okay, I'm done with my park. I had so much fun building this. I love theme parks. I used to have the knockoff Roller Coaster Tycoon game that I used to play at my granddad's house, and another one for the PlayStation 2. I had one on my DS. So having the ability to build theme parks in Cities Skylines is like combining two of my favorite type of game together. The only thing that would make it better is if we had the ability to build our own roller coasters, but I'm happy settling for the asset that it comes with. So the park is currently disconnected from the rest of the city. There's no road access, and I've taken away the train station stops just so I could get the water level sorted before I open the gates. I'm going to connect up the road and then give you a tour. As you come in, you're met with a pedestrian roundabout, and you can get to pretty much anywhere in the park from here. So people will obviously pick the quickest route, but there are some interesting things along each way. So obviously ahead there is a rock formation over the pathway. These were some rocks I found on the workshop. I think they are so cool. I've been able to use them in so many different ways in this build, and I love putting pathways through these kinds of things and making it a bit more interesting. Down this way you've got some toilets, a cafe, souvenir shop, and a little carousel. And then as you go around here, you've got some amusement booths and one of these drop things. Down here is a few more of the service buildings, and then some kind of kid-friendly assets like the little plaza, teacups, and a very small flat roller coaster. I wanted to use this rock piece here because it kind of gives that kind of eerie vibe. And this is where I've put the haunted house, tucked right the way back here, away from everything else. It's got loads of jagged rocks around it, so I wanted to make the area around it reflect the theme of the asset. There's some more amusement booths there with one of the pirate ship assets, and then another cafe. I tried to align the cafe with other assets in most places because it has this kind of L shape, and the tiles, even though they aren't the prettiest, they do kind of slot together, so you'll see a lot of cafes next to other things. And then there's a little bridge that goes across here and down through another rock formation. There's a souvenir shop tucked back here, and then there's a lot more rides down here with one of these spinny, swingy things. I love these kinds of rides, they're so fun. And some dodgems, and a few more souvenir shops and restrooms with one of the Ferris wheels, a few more amusement booths, another carousel, restaurant on the corner, plaza, a few more of the same assets, and then the log ride. This ride was actually the inspiration for the theme of this build with all of the stacked rocks. When I was doing the plan, I kind of put this one down first, tried to put some rocks around it to almost artificially extend the rocks on the asset. Obviously, it didn't really work very well because you can't get them that close, but I'm glad that I tried it because it gave me the inspiration to use rocks for the rest of the park, and I think it will look pretty good from the ground. Through here, you've got another pathway that goes through the middle of the rock, and then you get onto the main attraction. This roller coaster on the island was inspired by Thorpe Park. It's an amusement park in the UK, and it is on kind of an artificial island west of London, and this is a kind of mini Thorpe Park just with one asset on it in the middle of this lake. You can get to it from all directions, and there's a lot of crossings on the water, so you can get a really great view of everything as you walk over here. And I really love this bit where the pathway just goes over these rocks along the edge of the water. When you walk up here towards the roller coaster, you're getting some really great views. The rest of the empty spaces are just filled with the tropical plants. And then along the water's edge and around the edge of the whole park is rocks. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to have this kind of magical escapism feel where you don't really know that you're still in the rest of the city when you're on the ground. So when you're down here, you can't really see the ground. Obviously you can see the capital over there because of all the tall buildings, but you can't see anything directly outside of the park, which is exactly what I was going for. I had to hide some electricity sources around the edges. I didn't want there to be any large utility pieces over here, so I've kind of tucked some away behind the rocks. There's some along the road edge and some down here as well. And I've just noticed that the traffic is particularly bad coming into the park because everyone wants to come down here. I even added the slip road in here because when I did the test version, it made the roundabout really busy, but I'm going to need to find a better way of getting people down here. Obviously we've got the train routes, but it doesn't look like that many people are using them just yet, so maybe it's time to put in some buses. When I first drew up my plan for Calathea, I had this area marked out for a theme park. It was one of the first things I decided to do, and I knew from the beginning that I wanted to leave it till the very last build. We've done 20 themed builds in this city, and it feels like it's flown by. The first build was this Spanish-inspired village with all custom assets. It has grown a lot since the last episode, so I've been coming back and doing little pieces here and there, and I've done a little bit more detailing. But this really set the tone for the theme of Calathea, drawing inspiration from places like Spain and Italy with the housing style and a bit more of a quaint rural feel. Next door to this town is the first industry area, a massive farm, and I tried to keep it very rural by using dirt roads rather than normal roads. And although the traffic was quite bad to begin with, putting in the cargo station more recently has helped a lot. The second build was one of the biggest. It's a huge town on the very north of the peninsula, using the Green Cities housing and leisure commercial. It's got lots of parks and utilities, and lots of green space as well, and this district even has its own metro system. There's lots of sprawling suburbs out here for a much more suburban feel than any of the other districts, with a few larger facilities tucked away, like this little healthcare block and this recycling and industrial road. The other thing we did in this build was the ore industry area. The natural resource deposit on this map ran along the base of these hills, so it's quite an odd shape trying to go around the natural features that were in this area. But I've added some extra stuff as time's gone on, like an underground road that takes the trucks out so they're not all trying to get down one singular road, and obviously the cargo station as well. Doing this district was where I kind of fell in love with doing this industrial style detailing with lots of containers and kind of messy elements, some ground decals, and dotting some little things about to make every single space feel used. It was also where I learnt that large car parks don't necessarily get used. I was really hoping that by the time we got to the end of Calathea that this might be a little bit more busy, but obviously not. It's very normal to find a very large car park in an industrial zone like this. I'm not going to remove it. Some people are using it obviously, and a lot of trucks use it to turn around, so at least it's being used somehow. The third build was this San Francisco inspired district. It goes all the way up into the hills, and it really challenged me with my terrain skills, because it isn't easy to build on terrain that's that steep, and you have to have the right assets because you have very little depth to be working with. The town centre is quite small, with lots of Art Deco and Victorian style buildings. This square here was inspired by a square that I saw in San Francisco with lots of very white sleek buildings at the end of it. Obviously the lighting isn't helping over here, but I found these assets on the workshop to try and fit what I was doing. There's lots of these Victorian and Queen Anne style buildings up into the hills with a few mansions as well. A few more variations as you go up into the hills with some Art Deco mansions at the very top in a kind of gated community with a little gate on the road. And some larger sprawling buildings up here. It's not gated, but it's so hidden away that you wouldn't necessarily know it's here, and they have an amazing view of the rest of Calathea from up here. Obviously when we built this district, most stuff out this way wasn't here. So being able to see what they can see now is incredible. In this build we also did the forestry industry area. This industry area has been very self-sufficient. They've been getting on pretty well by themselves. They obviously have the right amount of resources, and I haven't had to come back and make any changes. The fourth build was this rich district down on the south of the map. This district is full of mansions with pools and beautiful gardens, and it has a real mid-century modern feel with a few Art Deco elements as well. It's a lot more spread out over here than some of the other districts, with each house having a lot of space and them having amazing views out into the sea this way. The commercial is from the shopping malls pack, and there's lots of facilities down here as well, like the police station and fire station, and a medium-sized hospital as well, and a yoga garden. There's a lot more wealthy parks in this district, like the marina and the floating cafe, and this great unique building from the workshop that looks out over the sea. There's a lot more greenery and open space in this district, with a few high-rise buildings, but even these are beautiful, and they don't necessarily impede on any of the other houses. It's a very sprawling district, and the mansions seem to go on forever, with lots of winding pathways through the middle, trees and parks dotted about. And the world's longest intersection where these two curved roads join. We also built a liberal arts campus in this episode. This is right next door to the wealthy district, and it's at level 4. The only reason why it's not going any higher is because it doesn't have enough attraction points. I don't have the space to put any varsity sports arenas down here, so I'm happy with it staying at level 4. It's got about 1,500 students, so I'm not too worried about their progress. There's lots of parks in and around the campus, and this one at the back here connects up to the wealthy district. There's also some castle ruins down here, and this actually inspired a future build. Episode 5 was the residential side of this district. This is a district of 2 halves. The southern half being very beautiful, very detailed, very opulent, with these gorgeous high-rise buildings, detailed parks, these little planters are everywhere, little pockets of greenery, and even a swimming pool in the garden of these apartments. Some low density in the same style as the wealthy district, the healthcare block over here with a crematorium, a hospital, and a sports hall and gym. The other half of this district though is the complete opposite. It's quite run down, it's quite basic, it's very low income compared to the other builds that we've done. It's right next to the tallest high-rise buildings in this district, and on the other side it's got the train tracks and the highway, so they aren't exactly in the best place, and they have a lot of noise pollution, and the houses aren't exactly the nicest. A lot of them have this kind of ruined detailing with iron fencing, some ground detailing, and some of them actually sit underneath the train line down here, which I actually really like. I think it really adds to the feel of this district, having a highway off-ramp and your house right underneath the train track. But you can't have the nicest house on a budget, so people with a low income need to live somewhere. There's a mix of vanilla and custom assets in this district, with some vanilla commercial down the back and a few industry buildings as well. And there's a recycling centre with a coal power plant, so there's a little bit of pollution, but that kind of goes with the theme of this district. I have built on this district since finishing it, added some more houses around the edge and a little bit more commercial, and pulled it all the way up to the main road that comes into this district. Episode 6 was all about public transport, with this crossover train hub in the centre of Calathea. It's got international trains coming in on the bottom level and internal trains going through on the top. There's 3 different internal lines that go through on the top level, 2 in a circular route, and then 1 that goes up to the north of Calathea. The internal line on the bottom level was added in a later episode. There's a train station either in or near all districts, and the ones that don't have a train station nearby have bus shuttles to run them to and from. For example, these 2 stations here are quite far away from the rich district, but there's a shuttle that runs from down here all the way up to the station and back again. This episode also saw a station go into the Spanish-inspired district, and this kind of sparked the extension of this district out towards the station. It's a very simple ground level Spanish-inspired station, and I've seen many stations like this in Spain and Portugal, so it really adds to the realism of this district. This train line goes up to the district at the very north of Calathea. This is one of the busiest stations outside of the main city centre because it's so far away from everything else, and I'm really happy to see that so many people are using the train to get to and from other districts. There's also a bus route here that takes people from the train station to the main town centre, but I did add a metro station later on, so people kind of split between the 2 to get into the town centre. I drew the train line going around the edge of this mountain in this episode. I couldn't actually make the train go all the way around here until I put these 2 districts in. This episode was one of my favourites to do because I love working with public transport, especially when you have a very built up city. I love optimising routes and making sure that everywhere is well catered for, and I really like to put a lot of thought into the transport before even building a district to make sure that I'm not going to have to remove anything and that they could be well serviced. Episode 7 was all about parks and recreation. We built this city park in the centre of Sunset Heights, and it was extremely busy. It reached level 5 pretty much by the end of the episode when I was building it, and it's in the centre of this big guitar-shaped roundabout in the middle of this district, and has a lake running through the middle and a bunch of things to see and do. And most people seem to be using it just to get from one place to another, which is great because that's bringing in ticket sales and it's making the district overall busier. In this episode, we also built the commercial side of this district, with lots of high-rise commercial offices and unique buildings. There's a high school complex down here with a library and a few parks, and a large police headquarters that's inspired by the LAPD building, and some commercial themes pulled over from the San Francisco-inspired district, which is just over the highway. This episode carried through the Spanish theme with these two unique buildings here. The lore for Calathea is that it was a beautiful, abandoned Mediterranean town, and when people came in to build on it, they decided to bulldoze most things, but they kept the prettiest things because they wanted to use them as tourist attractions, and they thought that it was their own way of honouring what came before them, even if it was a little bit misguided. So for example, there is a tube station right outside a cathedral, which probably isn't that respectful, but like I said, they thought they were doing the right thing. This district used to have a train station down here, but that was getting extremely busy, so I needed to put one in that had two separate lines. This side of the district has been built on a little bit with some more blocks down here, and I moved some things around over here as well, but the majority of it has stayed the same. The other park that we built in this episode was the Spanish Castle Ruin Park. Classed as a nature reserve and is currently at level 4. It hasn't quite got up to level 5 yet because it doesn't have enough attractions, but I didn't want to keep sticking assets in here and ruin the vibe of this park. I have come in and added a couple of things because when I was doing this episode, I didn't actually realise that there was a castle wall network that you can get in Find It. And I'd seen it around the map obviously, but I kind of just assumed that it was something that we couldn't use unless it was already there. But I found it when I was looking for something else, and I'm a little bit embarrassed that I didn't know it was there when I was doing this build because I could have made it so much better when I was doing it. But there are now some extra walls around here. The assets used in this build is a mix of Mediterranean assets from the workshop and vanilla assets from the catalogue. I needed to put an actual road in up these hills. This asset at the very top here is a unique building. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get away with just using pathways, but it's not too bad. There aren't that many cars that come up here. Most people tend to go on foot. It did allow me to also add in the viewing platform up here, which has an amazing view of the rest of the city. By using the network tool, I was finally able to do what I wanted to give the impression of when I built this park, and that is that the castle used to go all the way down the hill. Put some pieces in on flat ground to give the illusion that it used to go all the way up the hill, but now I've been able to actually connect everything up and put a castle wall ruin up there. There's a full castle asset here that functions as a park, and a couple of these cathedral assets as well. It was inspired by a real life castle in Malaga. Gibraltar Castle and the Alcazar sit right in the centre of the city. Castle is on a really big hill, and we walked all the way up it and all the way down it in about 30-degree heat in very cheap shoes. But there's a really cute cafe at the top where you can sit and get a drink or an ice cream, and you can walk around the tops of the walls where the archers would have sat in the turrets, and you get such a great view of the rest of the city up there. And then the Alcazar runs down into the centre of the city, and it runs all the way down to a square where there's an old amphitheatre, and it was just round the corner from where I stayed with my friends, and there's some really nice restaurants and bars around there. It feels like such a cultural place, even though it is kind of touristy. It's not the kind of typical English holiday kind of touristy. It does really feel like you're somewhere where they've tried to preserve their history. So I wanted to bring some of those elements into this build. Episode 8 was the start of the main city build. I've been wanting to use this Central Park unique building for ages, and I thought this was a perfect place to use it. It looks great as you're coming up this main road into the city where you've got a train line running over the top, and you can see all the way through to the city hall poking out over the top. This is a unique building from the workshop. It's got lovely organic shape. There's actually a pathway that runs underneath it that I didn't notice when I put it down, so people will walk through there. And there's also a couple of benches up on the back where people will sit and look out. There's lots of modular blocks in this district, like these pieces that I've used in a few other districts, and some from the shopping malls DLC. This episode was where I really started to get issues with the commercial imports, because trucks couldn't get to the buildings quick enough to deliver goods. So they were just removing themselves constantly. So there may be a few that are slightly different colours sitting next to each other, but it's because I was having to replace them so quickly that I stopped bothering trying to check if they were the same colour, because I knew that they were just going to remove themselves again soon. There's quite a lot of residential in this district as well, with some services like this hospital down here and the medical lab building from the high-tech buildings DLC. I've added a lot more residential since I first built this district because the demand was always so high. But it's mostly modular buildings like these and high-rise buildings from the Green Cities DLC. I did a huge expansion on the eastern side of this district off camera, and by adding in all of these high-density buildings, we've pretty much doubled the population of this district. I absolutely love the way that this train track runs through the middle of these buildings. These modular pieces are so great to work with, and having this track run through the middle wouldn't necessarily be good for the residents that live here, but it makes it look amazing. And the view as you go through on the train, it actually feels like you're going through a real life city. Like, it doesn't feel like a game at all. There's some plazas in the middle of some of these buildings with some car parks and some pathways. I tried to add pathways in between as many of the buildings as possible just to make it feel a little bit more real, to have people walking about rather than just on the pavements. And I also brought them right up to the main road that comes into this district. Episode 8 also saw the introduction of the metro in Calathea. The metro runs in the central part of the map, pretty much from Sunset Heights to Primrose Heights, and it is extremely busy. The aim was to get people off of the trains and onto the tube, and it's taken a few episodes to get here, but it's finally working. This is kind of the main metro crossover hub, and then there's another station up here outside the town hall, which is also very busy. I mentioned the metro station in Sunset Heights earlier. This station is probably one of the busiest because this district gets a lot of tourists coming in for the park and for the commercial and the unique buildings. There's also a metro station in the San Francisco inspired district, and I made a little park around it. Campus has its own metro station which gets a little bit of use, but the busiest one has to be the station in Primrose Heights. It's the only public transport connection Sunset Heights has to any other district, so every train that comes in is usually completely full. Episode 9 was a Spanish-inspired high-rise district. I really enjoyed doing this one and it's so pleasing to look at. I think it's probably one of the most realistic ones from the ground. Obviously it is a little bit out here on its own at the moment and I haven't had a chance to build up much around it. But when you're on the ground in this district, it feels like you're in a Spanish or an Italian or a Portuguese city. There's a park down the central boulevard with a few commercial pieces, and I really tried hard to find pieces that would fit in with this building style and wouldn't look out of place, which was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. There's a police station and a school back here with a couple of parks. There are some pathways that go through the middle of some of these blocks, and unfortunately there isn't any detailing on the sides of these buildings because they're meant to be used as modular pieces and go all the way around. But I wanted to add some variation that wasn't just these same blocks over and over and over again. This district is on the other side of the farm to the Spanish-inspired low-density district, so I thought it felt right having the two of them close to each other. There's also a bus that runs between the two because the nearest train station is over there. Episode 10 was the oil industry area. This is the largest industry area on this map and it goes all the way across this bay here. There's also a cargo harbour that brings in the majority of goods into Calathea. So this road did get very busy for a moment and I had to do some traffic management to make sure that the cars could actually move. It's working fairly well and it's connected to the ore industry area over here by a road that goes through the mountain. So the trucks have plenty of routes to get around and the traffic has died down a lot. Episode 10 was another one of my favourite builds. This is a tourism bay on the other side of the hills to the rest of Calathea. It has 4 really grand hotels with some unique buildings, some shopping malls, leisure and tourism commercial, a shopping mall on the bay, and a tram line that goes down from the train station around the edge of the bay and then back again. There's a small amount of residential up here because otherwise people will be travelling miles to go to work, and it was also an episode where I tried my hand at using keys. We get a lot of people coming in via train and most of them go down to get onto the tram. There's some beach assets down here with some marinas and a floating cafe to give it that kind of luxurious, exclusive feel. And this unique building down here kind of carries that Spanish element through. This district is inspired by a town called Port Sawyer in Mallorca, which is a tourist town of sorts, but it's a little bit more off the beaten track and quieter, doesn't have as many bars or clubs, so you tend to get more families and more wealthy holiday stayers go there. A huge marina and a Jumeirah hotel which sits up on a cliff on the edge of the bay, and that was the inspiration for the hotel placement over here. Episode 12 focused on industry. We built this huge unique factory block on the south of the map and built an internal cargo train network. There's at least 8 unique factories down here with a bunch of offices, some unique buildings, and of course a cargo train station. This train station can take trains internally and externally, and the internal cargo train network has been extremely busy. Putting in this network has taken a huge amount of trucks off the road, especially with the cargo harbour being on the complete opposite end of the map. It's allowed goods to be distributed a lot easier because there's a cargo train station in every industrial area. This is the one in the forestry district. There's one over here in the ore industry area. one near the harbour in the oil area, and there's even one on the farm that has its own offshoot track. We also built a few unique factories up here in the north as well. These are much larger and uglier assets, and I thought it would be best to put these up here with the oil and ore industry buildings because they have a lot more turrets and chimneys on them. Episode 13 was my biggest build to date. It was this huge capital city build that took me over 9 hours to do and has everything from high density residential to offices to commercial to unique buildings, a monorail, parks, schools, fire, police, everything. The southern end of the island is the low income area with lots of more rundown buildings, some vanilla, some custom, and then it goes up into a nicer residential area with some industry on the other side, and then a bit of mixed use with some housing, some unique buildings, some schools, some offices, and then we get into the skyscrapers. Over here is more of an IT centre with lots of buildings from the workshop, some from the Art Deco DLC, and some from the Green Cities IT catalogue. There's also the luxury hotel unique building as well, and hidden down here is a little eco market over a tube station that runs underground. Down here is the centre of the capital, with one singular nod to the Mediterranean theme, next to a monorail station and the Lungs of the City unique building. There's a little market square out the front with another unique plaza, some shopping malls, restaurants, and this grand library unique building from the workshop. We couldn't do a capital city build without the Empire State Building. I found one on the workshop to put in the north of the capital. It's got a pseudo central park out the front of it, with some more skyscrapers up the top, and then another park that the monorail goes around. There's also a baseball pitch down here that brings in a huge amount of visitors, and the north part of this island is unfinished. I was planning on coming back and finishing it off, but there was so much other stuff to do, I just haven't got around to doing that yet. Episode 14 was this golf course resort. This was another one of my favourite builds. Even though it was quite simple, it really adds to the wealthiness of this end of Calathea because it's right next to the mansion district. It's got a huge resort building at the front with a few commercial and parks on the other side of the road, and this castle detailing was already here on the map. It fits in so well with the castle theme that we've got running through the rest of Calathea. This golf resort acts as a city park. It's a 5-star park, having had over 66,000 visitors since it was built. Episode 15 was this eco retreat on the other side of the hills. There's some log cabins tucked away up on the side of the hills with some parks and some lodges, and they have some great views out this way away from the hustle and bustle of the rest of the city. There's a small town down here with its own train station. The commercial is all from the Green Cities pack with lots of markets, and there's a few parks like these beach assets and some piers which are obviously drawing in a lot of people, and there's also some unique buildings down here as well. There's a small amount of high density housing up here that I did off camera, and a small community of low density housing on this side of the bay. And then over here is the main attraction, the nature reserve. This nature reserve was so fun to build. I love camping, and working with this park type is one of my favourite things to do. It's a 5-star park, having had over 125,000 visitors, and I used some terrain detailing in this park to make some interesting landmarks, like these viewing points up on the top here, where you can see this hidden waterfall around the side of the cliff. You can see up to the lodges and even over the hills to the capital. There's some cabins down on this side and some tent parks over here with a few fishing piers and campfires. Episode 16 was the airport. This airport has been so busy, it's completely undone all of the work that I've done on the traffic management in Calathea. Every single plane that comes in is completely full, and sometimes there's multiple planes coming in at once. I don't know why they even bother taking off again because they never have anyone leaving the city. Next to the airport is a medium-sized town. There's lots of generic housing down this way with a few healthcare buildings and some parks, some high-density housing towards the town centre, and then some shopping malls commercial, some hotels and some offices with 2 of the shopping mall unique buildings over the road. This glass train station sits over the road and takes people into the main city, and that's the track that goes in on the bottom of the train station over here. And the other line runs through with cargo from this second oil industry area. Because the only cargo harbour was on the very north of the map, I wanted to add one down here as well so that goods weren't only coming in one place. So this cargo harbour has been really busy as well. It's got its own train station, and there's a small amount of oil industry assets and some generic industry buildings too. Episode 17 completely broke my game. It was supposed to be a very laid back build on the southern part of the island on the north of the map, but unfortunately something went wrong and it corrupted my game and I had to spend hours trying to fix it. Because this island is disconnected from the rest of Calathea, there's a ferry system that runs from the Spanish high-rise district to Sunset Heights, to the capital, and over to the island. The town centre on this part of the map is a pedestrian zone with shopping malls, commercial, and a few unique buildings and parks. There's also a medium-sized community down here using the Green Cities DLC housing and commercial buildings from the Campus DLC. I really love this commercial style, and I'm really glad that I got to use it in one of the districts, because the buildings are very low and very flat and have really nice detailing on them. There's a high school in the centre with a football pitch and a skate park, and then a small amount of high density housing across the back. They have a great view of the sea out this way, and then there's a small amount more over here as well. I have built a little bit more onto this district to keep up with the residential demand in between episodes. And this district, I like to think, is people who are wealthy but don't want to flaunt their money because they have the greatest view of the capital from out here without any of the noise, any of the pollution, and they're in their own little haven over here. I also put an international ferry harbour in this episode. It's been very busy so far, bringing in a lot of people, and there's some bus routes that take them out into the town centre. Now, because this is an island and it's not connected up to the mainland by road, I tested out a cargo train connection to see if that would be sufficient for all of the commercial on this island, and it looks like it is. Haven't had any issues getting goods to shop so far, and they've got every single facility that you could possibly want on this island. This was a bit of a gamble to do because I hadn't tried building on an island before, so I'm really glad that it worked. Episode 18 was this zoo build. Again, I really love working with zoos. I think I just love all of the park types really. I've come to really enjoy working with all of them throughout this series, but zoos have a special place in my heart. I tried to use different terrain levels in this park to make it interesting, and I built a lot of lakes and hills and some dried up riverbeds down here, and it kind of sits in this bowl with raised terrain on all sides. There's also a cable car that takes people from the main town over to the zoo, but still no one has used it. I'm starting to think that I've actually done something wrong with it because not a single person has got on to use the cable car yet. They're all getting on the bus down here, or getting on the metro, or they're even walking. I know that if I was here, I would be jumping on that cable car to get such a great view of the whole park as you go over. You get to see this hidden lake down here, and it goes all the way up to the top of the hill. And when you're up here, you can see so far all the way around Calathea, so it's a shame that no one wants to use it. And then we're back up to the last episode, which was episode 19. We built this small community on the north of the island with some eco high-tech buildings. It feels very weird to say that this is going to be the last episode of Calathea because it's been a constant in my life for the last few months, but I'm very excited to move on to Cities Skylines 2 and see what I can build with that. I'm sure I'll come back to Calathea in the future because there's a lot of areas that haven't been built on yet, but I'm really proud of everything that I've done. I think I've done one of everything of the DLCs that I have, and I'm so happy that I was able to fit all of this in before the 24th of October. I know this episode is coming out a day late. I've had a really hectic week last week and I wasn't able to do any filming up until Sunday, so I hope you can forgive me for putting out the last one late. But I really hope you've enjoyed this series. I had such a good time making it, and seeing all of your comments and all of your suggestions has really meant the world to me that you're that invested in this series. I hope you'll continue watching my videos when I go on to Cities Skylines 2, and Paloma Valley is going to be continuing in the background, and I'm sure that I'll start up another series at some point because I can't sit still for too long. So I guess this is me signing off for the last time from Calathea. Thank you so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you around.